Children, families, and adults, hello and welcome. Because we were not able to gather this past Sunday for our class as usual, I wanted to be in touch this week via this video, and I'm recording this from my home because I thought that probably many of you all are at home today. Well, today and over the next couple weeks, we're going to be sharing a godly play story called The Faces of Easter, and it takes us through 7 important events in Jesus' life leading up to Easter. And we're going to hear these stories and figure out where we fit into Jesus' life. So let's begin. The story began when the baby was born. God chose Mary to be the mother of God. Hear these words and listen to them carefully. God chose Mary to be the mother of God, and the Word was born, a wordless child. God gave Mary as the baby's mother and Joseph as the baby's father. And when the baby looked up at Mary's face, already he saw the shape of the cross. And as the baby looked up at Joseph's face, already he saw the shape of a cross. Mary and Joseph held the baby close and kept him warm. They helped him eat and sleep, and they did all the things that parents do to help their children grow up. Now, children and families and adults watching, this first event in Jesus' life makes me wonder some things, and I have some questions, and I'm going to, in a second, invite you to discuss these questions. This story makes me wonder if any of you were ever born. I wonder what the important births have been in your family, and who was there, and how they felt. So I invite you to press pause and either discuss with who you're watching or to meditate yourself about these questions. And in that discussion, what you may have realized or learned is that your family and your life is part of God's story. The second important thing that happened in Jesus' life was that he grew up and he became a boy. And when Jesus was 12 years old, he went with his mother and father and all the townspeople from their town of Nazareth, and they traveled to Jerusalem, the big city, to celebrate a festival of the High Holy Days. And after they celebrated, as they traveled home, Mary and Joseph lost sight of Jesus. But they assumed that he was somewhere in the crowd. They assumed that he was walking along with the other children on their way back home. But when they made it back to their house in Nazareth, they realized that Jesus was not there, and that he had not been walking alongside them. And so Mary and Joseph went back to Jerusalem as fast as they could, trying to find their son. They looked at the places they had eaten. They looked at the places where they had slept. They looked everywhere. but they could not find him after looking for 3 days and 3 nights. And then they looked in the temple. And there they found Jesus, their 12-year-old son, talking to the temple priests. And when Jesus talked, the priests listened because he knew so much. And when the priests talked, Jesus listened because he wanted to learn even more. And then Mary and Joseph asked Jesus a question that all parents ask their children. And children, maybe even your parents have sometimes asked you this question. They asked him, "Child, why did you do this?" And Jesus said something strange. He said, "Did you not know that I would be in my Father's house?" Mary and Joseph did not understand Jesus, but they never forgot what he said. This story in Jesus' life makes me wonder some things also that I'm going to invite you to discuss or think about. This story makes me wonder if any of you have ever been lost and where that happened and how you felt. This story makes me wonder if any of you have ever been found and where and when and how that felt. So I invite you to press pause and discuss that as a family or to think about that by yourself. As we come back together, you may have realized or learned as you were discussing those questions that your family and your life is part of God's story. We're going to close the way we do at our children's chats and worship with a prayer. And as we do in worship, I'm going to pause to give you time and space to repeat back to me the prayer. So let's pray, and I invite you to join in. Dear God, thank you.
Dear God, thank you
for giving Jesus life
for giving Jesus life
and for finding him in the temple.
and for finding him in the temple.
Give us life and find us also.
Give us life and find us also.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you everyone for joining us. A couple more notes. I want to invite you back next Tuesday at the same time and same place where we'll be hearing some more stories from the Faces of Easter, more stories of Jesus' life that we can place ourselves in that lead us to Easter. Also, I want to invite you to tell me how this experience was for you. If you can email me either a picture of your family or whoever you were watching this with, and email me like a summary of what you talked about, of maybe what an important birth was in your family, or a time that you got lost or found. And maybe that's something I can certainly respond back to over email or text, or I can maybe include it in a newsletter or even mention it next week as we gather next Tuesday. So dheim@zionsa.org for that. And thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you next week.